YouTube friends, what's going on? David Lee back with a brand new video. Today we're talking about what is an IR cut filter and do you need one? An IR cut filter basically eliminates some of the IR pollution. What does that mean? With your sensor, if you have a Canon camera, a Sony camera, a Panasonic camera, every manufacturer has some level of IR filtration. To not make it too technical, when light is hitting your sensor, what it does is there's different spectrums of ultraviolet and non-ultraviolet light that is kind of being mixed together, right? So that way red, green, blue, the RGB channels are looking the way they're supposed to. Now what happens when you have too much ND, right? When ND is put in front of a sensor, well, put in front of your lens, and then hits the sensor, when light's going through ND, it can create IR pollution. When you're stacking too much ND in front of your lens, that will kind of manipulate the level of IR pollution that's going to be created with the sensor and the light coming into the sensor. Now, certain cameras and certain sensors have better IR filtration built in, but other cameras, not so much. Now, I haven't tested IR filtration extensively, like on every single camera known to man. I just don't have that kind of budget. Wish I did, that'd be kind of nice. But regardless, with a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, I feel like a lot of people want to know that, especially coming from my older Blackmagic cameras. If you ever use the Ursa Mini Pro or the Blackmagic Cinema camera, IR filtration was a big thing. With the Pocket 4K, I wanted to test that theory and see if you do need IR filtration or if the built-in IR filter in the camera and the sensor is good enough. So what exactly does a IR cut filter look like? Well, there's different types. You have, your 4x5/6 filters, like your square filters. Tiffen, which I use their black sand filters, I use their ND filters. They also have circular IR cut filters. So I have an 82mm one. And right off the bat, you can see that it looks kind of green, right? So if I put this in front of my face should look have like a kind of a green hue or like a green tint to it, right? If I bring this closer in, maybe face it the other way. Yeah. So automatically you can kind of see that everything kind of has a little bit of again, like a green hue or a green tint to it. And if I just remove it, right? And then just put it back in. Close that up a little bit more. There we go. And yeah, so the idea behind this is basically when you're color balancing, color correcting, and even color grading your footage in post, when you're using a ton of ND, 8-stop or 10-stop, usually an IR cut filter should be used or can be used if the built-in sensor of your camera doesn't have that great of IR filtration. Now that being said, there's a difference between theory and practice, right? Let's take the actual theory and see if the practice matches. Now these next few shots are gonna be outside, kind of a standalone shots, nothing really rigged up or anything like that, just the camera and my ND filter. ND filter I'm using is the SLR Magic variable ND filter. It only goes up to a 6-stop of ND, right? And from my tests, I found that with 6 stops, you really don't need the IR cut filter. It's nice to have, right? But it's not necessary. I feel like if you're going with like an 8-stop or a 10-stop ND filter, then maybe an IR cut filter might help you out. Now let's take a look at the first example. This was shot in late afternoon. Here in California, the sun's been setting pretty late, like 8 o'clock, 8:30. But this is around like 5:30. Sun's pretty high up, so very, very harsh lighting. I have the ND filter set all the way to maximum, 6 stops. Now we have the IR cut filter in front of the ND filter. Now let's switch to another example. This was early morning-ish, around 9:30 in the morning. And again, same thing. We have an example of the camera with just the ND filter set to maximum. Now we have just the IR cut filter, no ND, and I stopped my lens down all the way to a T20. Cool, now we have our next shot with the IR cut filter and the ND filter. And now we have a shot with the same setup, ND filter, IR cut filter, but now I changed the white balance down to 4600 Kelvin. The gist of it is, regardless if you're using an IR cut filter or not using an IR cut filter, it's not going to magically, change or give you the color balance and the color correction like in camera, so to speak, right? You're still going to need to adjust temperature, whether that's in camera or in post. You're going to need to adjust the red, green, and blue channels in your lift gamma and your gain, right? It's not like a quick fix, but I feel like, again, if you need to use more than a 6-stop ND, like an 8-stop or a 10-stop, I think that's where something where an IR cut filter can really come in handy. Now, price-wise, not too expensive. It's like buying a Tiffen variable ND. You're gonna spend at least over $100 for it. But that being said, spending $137, is it something you're going to use a lot, or something you might use every now and then? I don't know. I mean, it's something that I think most of us could afford, and it might be nice if you're always shooting in really harsh daylight. You're always maxing out your ND, your variable ND, 8-stop or 10-stop. I think in that situation, then spending $137 for something that will give you somewhat, I think, of an easier time. When I say easier time, that's relative, right? Because it depends on the scene and all that. But it might give you an easier time getting your skin tones in color. At least you know that with the green tint, the green cast, you can kind of dial out most of it without affecting too much of the image. If you guys have any questions, comments, leave them down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't, just so you're notified of new content coming out. Like the video if you liked it. And remember, friends, every day you have an opportunity to create your experience and to write and tell your own story. My name is David Lee, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.